Well, hey guys, welcome to Produce Like a Pro Tips. So here we go. Today we're going to be talking about the bottom line, pro tips for recording bass guitar. Now, bass guitar is kind of like at the bottom line. It's what holds the whole song together. Bass and drums are really kind of called the rhythm section. Everything else is kind of like the the ear candy or the little extra like melodic kind of things. I remember a phenomenal bass player that I knew. He told me once when I was first kind of starting out with being in bands and that kind of stuff, and he said the drums and the bass are like the meat and the potatoes. So as you think about, you got your meal, you got your meat and you got your potatoes. That's your main meal, and then you have sides. You can have beans, you can have whatever. You get the salad. You can have the list is endless, but you got to have your meat and potatoes. So I thought that's kind of an interesting way to kind of like look at the bass guitar, and so it really is an important instrument to kind of just fill things out. And so let's talk about that. Let's give you some pro tips on how I treat bass guitar. Number one, choose the right bass guitar. Now, of course, this one's a bit of a you might only have one guitar, maybe one bass guitar. But if you have the luxury of choosing different bass guitars, they all have different sounds, and so this is a big deal, and it's the same you would use for acoustic guitars, for pianos. If you do a lot of virtual, like a lot of your DAWs come with a virtual instrument, they come with a virtual piano. Play around with the different pianos. Maybe you're working on virtual bass inside of the box. You're using, play around with different sounds. They all have different sounds. And depending on what you want for the song, is the song do you have a lot of drums and a lot of things happening down low, and maybe you want the bass to be doing something on its own, sticking out? Maybe you want something that's a little bit higher. Maybe it's a little bit, I don't want to say thinner, but it's a little bit more of a mid-rangey kind of bass. But then you might want something that's just really solid. Maybe you're just holding down these really low notes, and you just want to hit these low notes and let them ring out, and just hold those lows. Make those choices, and make those choices based off the guitar that you use, the bass guitar. And so number two is play with different pickups. Now the pickups on a bass guitar, you can use the neck pickup or the bridge pickup. Usually the bridge pickup is a little bit thinner or a little bit more brighter, or has a higher kind of brighter kind of sound. And then the neck one is a little bit smoother or warmer. So just remember that when you're picking it again, pick those sounds. And I always tell my students, start at the beginning with the sound that you want. Don't ever think I will fix it later. Try and fix it at the very, very beginning, and learn to make those decisions earlier on. Learn to make them, and because then when you come to the mixing stage, a lot of the decisions have already been made earlier on in the production, in the composition, in the programming of everything, and deciding on everything. So maybe you want to use the neck pickup because you want just a warm kind of sound. You don't want the clarity of the actual notes. You don't want to hear the slides, and you don't want to hear the actual higher kind of the finger picking kind of sound. Or maybe you're using a pick and you don't want to hear the tick, 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 the little clipping sound when you're hit. Or maybe you do. Maybe you really want a lot of clarity because there's a lot of stuff happening in the low end, and you want to have a lot of that clarity. And so play with those neck pickups. Sometimes you might want to use both, use the bridge and the middle, depending on the bass guitar you use. But play around with those pick settings. Again, I should say pickup settings. Again, if you put it closer to the neck, the more the pickups that you use closer to the neck, the warmer it's going to sound. It's going to have less clarity. And the more you go to the bridge, a little bit more clarity you'll have. So just knowing that, play around and find the sound that you want for your song. All right, number three is a proper gain staging, or the recording levels. This is a big deal because you've got to make sure that you're over that 75% mark. What that means is, if you look at your meters when you play your bass, it should be hitting 50 to 75%. It should be hitting over that half. I always say you got to get it over half. If it's under half, you're technically getting wrong. You're getting to that place where it's like you need to bump up. So I say aim for 75. Now, some of your notes might be 80. Some of your notes, if you play a bit quieter, might be about 70. But aim for that 75. So, thinking 100% is, you've distorted the sound, and it's not a nice distortion. It's not like an analog distortion. It's a digital distortion, which is clipping, and you can't get rid of it, and it's nasty. It's a horrible sound. You don't want that. You never ever want that. You want to fix that. I always say that there's not many things that you can do wrong in recording, because it's an art and it's a form of art. But distorting your distorting your audio clip, that's one of them. That's one of the things that's wrong, and you can't get out of. I mean, you can't fix it. There's ways to kind of try to do your best to fix it, but no, you pretty much just, if you see that, and that's what I do. If I get a distortion, I do not think I'm gonna fix that later. I fix it now, because it's always gonna sound better. Yeah. Trust me on that one. Just trust me on that one. If you're recording at 100, then it's just going to be red line. It's going to be flat tops on your waves. You're just going to see this flat part, and it's just horrible. Now, when you're talking about analog gear, you can distort it. You can redline it. You can clip it. You can really drive it hard. That's a whole nother world. But what I'm talking about is if you clip it, if you're gain staging and you're too loud going in, and it's a digital distortion, big no. So make sure your gain staging is right. Again, I aim for that 75% mark. 50 to 75%, you're in the safe area, and you can do that. Most of the times when I'm recording, I'm probably around the 80%, maybe up to 90%, depending on what I'm doing. But yeah, so I'm always aiming around. I'm making sure it's in that top 10, 15, 20%, somewhere right around there. So you could bump it up to 80 depending on your recording skill. But as a safe zone, 75 is great. You can push a little bit more if you want. It helps everything in the end. You get more clarity out of everything. But making sure you have proper gain staging is a big key. It's a game changer. It was for me when I started to finally start doing it right from the beginning. So awesome. So now let's go to number 4. Is think like a drummer. Now, I got this tip off someone I was in a band with once, and he said, whenever I play bass, I play bass as if I'm a drummer, and he played drums as well, and so he kind of really got it. And it's such a unique, and it's such an awesome way to think about bass playing. If you got the drums going kick, snare, a kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, and then you're thinking as a bass player, dum, 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 dum. You're kind of like, you're feeling the drums, and it's kind of like a melodic drummer. That's really what you're doing. And so I encourage you, next time you're recording your bass, think like that. Even if you're inside of the box, if you're using virtual instruments, do the same. Think the same way. Like, what would a bass player do? Ba-dum, bum, ba-dum. Whatever it is, feel like it as if you're a drummer. And a lot of the time, rhythm and music and melodies, it's such a moving thing. It's such a so shut the door to your studio and jam out as you're pushing those piano keys, as you're pushing those notes. If you got a bass, play the bass like you're a drummer. Think like a drummer. Often there's a lot of percussive kind of things that you're playing. You might go dum, dun, dun, dun. There might be these little ghost notes of the little before you play the note. That's perfectly fine too, and which that actually really, really, really helps. So awesome, guys. So hopefully those are the main keys for the bottom line, which is tips for recording bass guitar. Now, if you want access to the complete Produce Like a Pro course that I offer, just check the link out below. I'm running a sale at the moment, and you can check that out. And it's absolutely amazing. A lot of my students are using these same techniques, and they're getting placements. They're finding success. They're getting their music used in film and TV shows. Just this, as I'm recording this, just last week, one of my students got 3 placements in one day. And using a lot of these techniques and a lot of these skills that to record, good and to have professional recordings. And all these tips, I've been recording since 2000, when I first got my first computer and started pushing a record button on in a studio that I was kind of doing an intern at, and I was editing drums. That was my first kind of like job description, or first job in the studio. And so I've learned all these techniques, and they're big deals because these are the things I did wrong, and then when you do it right, instantly it sounds better. And I always tell my students inside of the course, I show you guys the plugins that I'm using, and I say, freeze the screen and copy these settings and save it as your own, and start from there. Start from that spot. And I always say, I'm a big surfer, so I like sharing this story. But when I first started surfing, in surfing, you need to learn to paddle. You need to learn to duck dive underneath the wave. You need to learn to turn around on your surfboard, and you need to know which waves to pick to catch. You need to know when to catch them so you don't go upside down. And so the guy that was teaching me how to surf the first time I ever did that, he just basically said, you don't need to worry about this, and this just yet. So I'm going to turn you around on the wave and push you towards the shore, and you just have to stand up. And so having someone in your corner, having someone show you, these are the steps, these are the keys. I'm going to push you off, just head towards the shore, and try to stand up. And that's where the fun begins. That's where it really, really starts to come to life. And that's where it's really fun. And so I encourage you, check that out. The link's below, and I'd love to see you there, and I'd love to help you out and support you and find your success as well. Awesome, guys. I'll see you in the next one.